Hey guys, welcome back to the Attachment Point News Roundtable. I got Nestor with Sigo Auto on here, and congrats on the fundraise. And been following you guys for a while. I'm pumped to record a quick conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brett. Great to see you again. Great to connect, and excited to talk insurance and tell you guys about Sigo.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll do my 30-second elevator pitch for doing a podcast and, what I think you guys are all about, and correct me where I'm wrong. Direct to consumer, auto insurance for the Spanish speaking market, that usually I would say it's not a direct route for them. And I don't want to say there's people taking advantage out there, but there are people who don't give them fair time, respect, don't judge them fairly on the low risk that they often are as a population. And I really, from the beginning, I think I messaged you like, hey, let me know if I can help, because I think what you're doing is cool and matters. I appreciate what you guys are up to.
Yeah. No, I think that's spot on. And look, I think what we're really focused on is affordable access to auto insurance for immigrants and the working class. And look, there's some people that take advantage, but insurance is hard and complicated and hairy, and there's a lot of legacy issues.
Yeah.
And that leads to other problems and problems for the customer that we're trying to solve now with modern tech and also some different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you're not just attacking the incumbent. I don't want to pick on certain names that sound like drinks or anything, but I appreciate that you're not just, defacing, quasi competition. But, before we hit record too, you mentioned just selling insurance yourself, like that being some of the best research you could have done, literally pushing paper for a year and a half and see how it went. How'd you get into that? Or I think that's phenomenal, that you didn't just try to parachute in from the top and say, I have this tremendous idea. You went from the ground up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started out, I'm not an insurance guy. My background's in finance. I just had some family members that were struggling. And the more I started peeling the onion, I realized, hey, I think I can fix this. And
Cool.
the first thing I saw was the brokers that my family was interacting with. And I said, okay, if I think these guys are doing a bad job, let me do a good job. And I dove in and we started building a technical platform and selling insurance for carriers. And I realized there's a lot of challenges to what they're doing too, and also realize an opportunity to improve on the product. And so we operated as an agency for about 2.5 years, and now we're taking everything we learned and building our own insurance product and launching our MGA.
I didn't realize you guys have been doing it that long on your own. That's really cool. And you're right. I mean, I don't want to be slow. Like I'll have a referral. I was bad maybe a month and a half ago. My wife's doing grad school rotations. I'm in San Diego, half day on Monday, half day on Friday, commuting back and forth. And I sat on a lead for like 3 weeks. That was a referral from a family friend. I don't say that with pride, It's tough. We get behind.
It is tough.
Yeah, I know the broker fees sometimes with non-admitted product. I think it fits more on the business side, there's a lot more paperwork. I think putting those on people's good records is kind of funky. You know what I mean? So it's cool to be able to do that with, technology to kind of make the lift lighter on everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we've been doing, or I've been trying to do this for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I was dialing out, trying to sell people insurance from business school. And I went to business school in Pennsylvania. And so Pennsylvania doesn't really have the same challenges that New Jersey or Texas, Florida, California have. So after calling a couple hundred people and realizing they didn't have the problems with broker fees and accessing auto insurance, that was a great learning experience. One, it got me comfortable with taking no's to the face, but also kind of learning there's a lot of nuance here, right? And a lot of these brokers and agents are charging fees because they need to operate profitably. And there's a lot of challenges to doing so, just given how expensive and how outdated a lot of the processes in tech are. And so that's kind of what I started learning, and we started building the tech to lower the cost of service. And so maybe one agent can deal with a lot more customers and maybe lower the cost and pass those cost savings on to the customer.
Yeah, for an insurtech guy, I think you can cringe. So working from home, like a lot of people, this is, 2.5 renewals for one commercial client. We didn't put in broker fees on that one. It was a non-admitted product, Markel product liability, but it's involved. There's a lot of paperwork. Even picking up a check, dropping off a check, making sure it funds. But auto insurance, I have a hard time believing there's not a better way, for a personal auto.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's right. And well, you look at the broker fees on personal insurance, they're not legal in every state.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania is one of those
Yeah.
states where brokers aren't allowed to charge these fees that brokers in California or Texas or Florida might be charging. But then you also look at the businesses, and for whatever reason, operating with
Hmm.
storefronts, having to staff up with bilingual staff to sell auto insurance versus being able to build a technical an online experience, a mobile first experience like
Hmm.
we're building. That's a lot more expensive to service. And so I think it's really kind of a relic of an outdated industry. But you've seen these agencies that are serving the non-standard market throw off cash like crazy, and private equity's been
Mm.
all over it for the last
Oh,
two
wow.
decades.
I didn't realize
Um,
that.
and yeah, and
Yeah.
there was just a big deal that Abri sold Confia Seguros, that they've been in for almost a decade now,
Mm.
but it's the fifth largest personal lines broker in the U.S., the largest kind of non-standard agency, if you will. And you just see there's a bunch of role it plays kind of in the space, but there's no incentive for them to improve the experience and invest in technology just because they're doing well, but the customer isn't doing well because they're squeezing every last dollar out.
Yeah, it's the question, because you can, should you? You know, and I understand people have to run a profitable business, but if you're hemorrhaging cash because of inefficiencies, like, why not play the game a little better,
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're for. That's what we're coming into the market to force,
Mhm.
right? Because it up until now it's seen as like a small corner of auto insurance. It's still huge, right? We're talking tens of billions out of a $300 billion private passenger auto market. We're probably closer to 350 now. And so it's kind of been ignored because all of a sudden insurtech's popping up with
Mhm.
homeowners and renters and other big ticket items. And just this corner has kind of skated by because they have old tech. If any of the carriers can't really move too much either because they're at the mercy of the brokers
Mhm.
who distribute 90% of their policies. And so they can't start competing directly because then these agents are just going to start selling someone else's policies. And so they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And the agents have just built these inefficient businesses that have resulted in harming a
Mhm.
customer, and not move forward for the last 30 years.
And it's crazy. I've been on the other side. I appreciate you kind of being sensitive to the challenges, even on the agent or the carrier side. The last day job I had, they had a librarian for a resource center, and I was like, guys, like, we need a better online resource. And the librarian was actually one of the biggest champions for the change. But they're like, if we do this guy doesn't have a job anymore. So sometimes on that small business side, it's, I could replace this person with a process, but then what are they going to do? And I don't know if we give people enough credit. I know there's some people who kind of want to hide in the back of an office and sort of do what they've done. But I think majority of the people want to change, evolve, take on some challenge. And, I do think we have about as many bookmark tabs and passwords and logins as we could like possibly have at this point. And there's got to be a little bit of a retraction, like cover wallet's done, potentially, for commercial. Um, yeah, but yeah, I think it's a really cool mission
Absolutely.
you guys are up to. And then, I'm half Mexican. I've been in greater LA my whole life. I'm in Orange County. Like, Spanish speaking population is a real thing. That spending dollars not going smaller. So
Yeah, it's funny. The U.S. is the second largest Spanish-speaking country after Mexico, right? Bigger than
so
Spain,
crazy.
bigger
Yeah.
than Argentina, and a lot of people don't realize that it's not everyone crossing the border. The border crossed most of the Spanish speakers in
Yeah.
the US, right? A lot of the US used to be Mexico, and a lot of places have spoken Spanish longer than the US has existed. And
That's fair.
so it's that's something that's often lost when you're maybe in New York and you only have small pockets of
Mhm.
immigrants that are speaking Spanish versus the Southwest and the South of the country. And so that's funny you bring that up because yeah, I mean, there's
I'm third generation. My
over 40
grandparents
million.
claimed they were born here, and I didn't believe them, but actually, it turns out they were. Like they've been here.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
No, it's a trip, and I just think, I don't know. I love Southern California. I almost moved up to the Bay Area at some point, but I'm partial to kind of our laid backness, our chattiness that you pointed out might be part of me being Mexican. You know, um,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so
Yeah.
funny, but I just think you guys are doing a really cool mission, and I do think they compare the internet to the printing press, and I think we're just starting to see all this change and kind of digitizing the non-digitized. Um, you know, I think Accords had their place. I think faxes had their place. I think forms and triplicate had their place, but I think a cell phone's a lot better way to get stuff done now, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you're getting in the insurtech space, and I think people are realizing, is that there's value to doing stuff maybe tech enabled rather than full tech. And to explain that, like you said, there's room for people that are trying to do right by the customer and working with the customer, but maybe it's their place isn't only selling auto insurance. It's helping that customer find auto and home and life, and helping them send money back home and helping them get a loan. It's funny because you look at where a lot of the Latino population gets their insurance, right? It's at the multi-servicios, the multi-services on the corner, right? Where you can get auto, you can get home, you can send remittances, you can pay your bills, and you can get divorced, all in the same spot.
That's funny.
Right? And that's kind of because people build that relationship with somebody, and for the complicated stuff, a lot of times auto insurance is the most complex financial product our customers buying, or at least the first. Even about 40% aren't even using bank accounts, and so but they need auto insurance. And so there's a lot of opportunity there to build that relationship and expand upon it, and not necessarily just do auto insurance and churn these auto insurance policies out with a storefront in the middle of my neighborhood.
Yeah, and so I live in Costa Mesa, which is next to Santa Ana, and candidly, there's a freeway on one side. It's pretty nice, and on the other side, it's just different. It's heavily Hispanic, and I've seen those stores. I never thought about it. Like I've worked in restaurants before, bartended, that good stuff, and those guys working 2 jobs, whatever else, like they're just busy, and if they have an efficient place, they're not going to question it. If they don't. They have their routine, and if it costs them an extra $100, they're not price shopping. They're just getting stuff done and going to work somewhere else and working really hard. So I think it's cool.
Yeah.
And I've, Kyle Nakasaki, I know we both mentioned. I always mess up his last name. I hope I'm saying okay. But we've always mentioned, Clear Cover, them doing a good job. I appreciate my Clear Cover experience, paying my bills, getting stuff done. Yeah, I appreciate that you're building something for the Latin, Spanish speaking population to have a similar clean experience,
Yeah. And Kyle Nakatsuji, I think he's done an awesome job, and I've been very fortunate to be in touch with him. He's been crushing it. He's built a great experience, and I think there's room for an experience for our market too, or in our community. And it's funny you mentioned the price sensitivity might not always be there, but I think there's a certain skepticism towards institutions that comes from being an immigrant, and also comes partially from being from Latin America. I mean, there's a lot of skepticism toward the government and just institutions in general, because there's been a lot of corruption. There's obviously been a lot of political turmoil over the last 100 years in Latin America that has forced people to come, like my parents came 50 years ago, right? And so it's funny because I think there's room for customers to be saving money, but they developed a relationship with their agent that speaks to them in Spanish and explains things to them, rather than when my aunt went online to one of the big carriers, she got overcharged and had no idea why they wanted her to pay $550 a month for her auto insurance. And so that relationship building, I think, goes a long way, particularly in our community. And that's part of what makes me so excited about building a brand and building that relationship with the customer, because I really think this is a flywheel of recommendations once you establish yourself and prove that you're really doing something for the people.
It's interesting you say that. I want to say it's called like the Banana Man or something, but I listened to an Audible book about a guy who was a big banana, salesman, back in the day. Was a salesman, then took the ship, sent one down there. They're talking about like the government being in charge of like coups and stuff in Central America to keep the banana industry rolling. It's like, I can see where you'd be a little paranoid, like.
I'm blanking on the name. It was man. It's a famous story, obviously. But that's exactly right. You have a lot of big businesses and candidly a lot of big American businesses and American government interests that have really influenced the region. And so that just kind of adds to the skepticism and the challenges and not feeling like you're part of the community and this society. And I think there's room to build something that's maybe not just English translated to Spanish, but written in Spanish and communicated first in your language, right?
Oh, totally. And I only know from the other side, when you can tell something was a different language, they did the best to bring it in English, but the dots might not be connecting. I don't want to be too distracted by this. I'll message you about it later. But also, Yeah, and I think it's really cool, the market that you're serving, the way you're taking care of them. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, so I work with a Canadian startup right now, Fineo, and the American work ethic and like the drive to build something. I think I heard Shama talking about like, only in the United States could you really do something amazing and epic. Like kind of show up with nothing, see an opportunity, grind, and just really have it become something he felt. So there's just two sides of every coin, and I think it is cool that, with the web, whatever else, there's more awareness, fair business practices. We're concerned about how things are being made in China. Like, I think it's good. I don't want to, everyone's doing their best, but yeah, it's kind of crazy, the history and kind of awareness we have now. And I think it's really cool, the troubleshooting you're doing. So kind of auto insurance, you guys are launching in Texas, I think is, all right to mention or fair to start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start there. So I mentioned we've been an agency for a while. So I got my license like over 3 years ago now. Started ripping dials in Pennsylvania. Went for several hundred calls before realizing my challenges. And then we got going in California, and then there we've been able to help a bunch of people get insurance. Last year we got our agency going in Texas, and we took everything we learned as an agency and writing auto insurance and built our own product. And so that's what we're getting ready to launch in Texas in the next 30 days. Is a product that kind of really attacks disparate impact, the way we kind of talk about it in insurance, right? Kind of that bias in underwriting, where even though things like maybe your credit score has some predictive power, it's not right for everyone, right? And it really penalizes minorities, immigrants, people that might not have a credit score, or people that may not have had that financial literacy early on and now have to carry it with them for a lifetime. And so we built a product that doesn't use credit score, that doesn't use employment, that doesn't use education. And instead we're offering discounts for opting into telematics and things like that. We think there's value in being able to underwrite a customer, not just with more data, but also with less data, and still doing a good job.
No, that's cool. It's funny. Some of the other stuff, I'll call it like weak signaling, because you can draw a signal from it because it may work. Like, doesn't mean it should, and doesn't mean it's the best. And cool, you did that 10 years ago, you did that 20 years ago, but shouldn't we improve? Like cars get better gas mileage, food's healthier. Like, why not try to be a little better? That's cool.
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed. I think that's exactly the opportunity we saw. We saw this corner in particular that hasn't moved in a long time, and now it's due. So
that's
what we're here for.
And I guess maybe the last thing to bug you about a little bit is just the fundraise. How was that journey? How was the VCs? How was, I'll say, the long nights and the battles that you take on for your tribe, the arrows you kind of take to set up the dudes behind you, or gals. How was that journey for you?
Man, it's a roller coaster. The founder journey in general, you got your highs, you got your lows. Look, I'd imagine a lot of people look at me and, okay, I was fortunate enough to have a couple fancy finance jobs and go to a fancy business school and build a network. But even then, I didn't have my parents to guide me, or a group of mentors that have raised money. I didn't have people that I could necessarily access for that candid feedback when it was early on about, hey, don't tell your story this way, tell your story that way. And I think that's a lot of what I learned since graduating about 2 years ago and going through hundreds and hundreds of these conversations with investors, is really learning kind of, one, what's important to investors. And that feedback was also amazing for building. It really, because a lot of investors talk to a bunch of different auto insurance companies. They hear what's going on in the market, and you can get feedback and you can get questions that help you refine your thesis and refine what you're working on. But we're so thankful to have closed kind of our $1.5 million seed round with a bunch of great investors that know insurance really well. And that's been amazing. And we're excited to be hiring and growing the team and getting ready to build.
It's interesting. So, Fineo is the one venture-backed startup I'm really, with building. I've been around a couple investor conversations. It's gnarly. I mean, they don't take it easy on you guys. And I get it though. It's not going to be easy out in the world, and you'd rather see holes in the boats before it's in the water, so they're pushing you,
No.
Well, and
that's
then
absolutely right.
Like, you had the bank and you had the kind of B school experience. I think it's pretty cool that you hit the phones too, because I would kind of come from the opposite end, selling copiers, selling office moves, having to build my own proposals, cold calling for a number of years. And it's interesting because I don't think there's a perfect road to any of this, so I kind of know that grind to make something nothing to a degree, but I don't, the projections, the understanding, the flywheel, the larger economics, I'm a lot of times looking at, business finances like a personal checking account, and I think to vision cast and to really build and go recruit money, there's a lot bigger, a lot more nuanced way to understand what's in front of you, so I think it's cool you're attacking it kind of both directions. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, I had 3 jobs while I was at undergrad, and one of them was at a bank on the weekends, 8 hours Saturday, 8 hours Sunday, taking phone calls and
Perfect.
angry customers. And
Yeah.
so that kind of got me ready. But I really appreciate your hustle, man. You're out there doing a bunch of stuff, getting in front of a bunch of people, and you got to like it, man. You got to like it. If you don't like it, it's not worth it. And it's funny you mentioned kind of investors don't take it easy, but they also sometimes they got a tough time because you got certain founders that might not be telling the truth and that have maybe raised a lot of money. And we've kind of seen a couple of examples where investors lose their shirts. And I mean, they have that fiduciary duty to their LPs as well. And maybe I'm going a little soft on them because I came from the investing side.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, and it's tough, particularly for first-time founders. I think that the challenge is you have a lot of repeat founders that know the game, that can cut off a couple of months off the early stages because they've already had some of those knocks. Yeah. And then all the investors are looking for them. And then you kind of have your first-time founders like me that were trying to figure it out and like, oh, I didn't know that investors would. Early on, one of the challenges was I realized in non-standard auto, the customer lifetime is a big challenge, right? You got a lot of high churn. And so that was something I flagged early for investors like, hey, this is a challenge. And that turned a bunch of people off. Fortunately, we kept running the agency. We realized our retention is awesome. Our average customer, we expect them to stay with us for over 6 years. And like, that's like unheard of in like this corner of the market. And so that now, obviously I see that kind of investors' eyes light up when I tell them that. But there's certain ways of storytelling that you just kind of learn with that experience. And so it's definitely a ride.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But no, I appreciate, man. I appreciate, you taking the time today. I think you guys are in a really cool position. And but yeah, we'll get this out to the insurance nerds community, kind of share a little bit. Look forward to watching the next episodes. Cool. Thanks, Nestor.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Brett.
Talk to you later, guys.